and welcome back. So if you watched last episode, you'll know that the fuel filter replacement didn't actually help the vehicle running whatsoever. It didn't make any difference, but it needed doing. It was quite old. It wasn't expensive. I think it was about 15 quid, and it took me about an hour in total. So it was worth doing. So the next thing to try is going to be spark plugs, and I'm reliably informed that while I'm doing it, it's such a big job that you might as well do your coils. I've priced everything up. It's going to cost about 500 quid, and that's the cheapest I can get it for OEM parts. I'm going with the NGK stuff, both for the coils and the plugs. So, stay tuned. So here we have all of the tools and bits and bobs that we'll be needing to do the job. There's quite a few that I didn't have, including enough hex sockets and Torx bits in the right size. I had a socket set from Halfords, which is really good, but it doesn't have any of these in. And just getting this one small kit saved me from spending another 300 quid on a better, bigger toolbox from them. Next thing is the magnet with the mirror. Now this is really useful for retrieving the spark plugs from deep in the bores. And then the pick and hook set is really good for helping you off with awkward hoses and clips. So that's definitely worth having while you're doing this. This is by Minotaur, by the way. I'm not affiliated with anyone, but I'm quite impressed with the quality of these tools, for the price certainly. Bit of brake cleaner for cleaning my sockets out and anything else. I don't want grease on my sockets. And this is my head torch. I use this all the time at work, and I can't see it being any less useful under the bonnet of the car. Over here we've got the inlet manifold gasket, which I got from Flying Spares. Again, there'll be a picture of this at the end of the video, along with the coil. These came from Autodoc, apparently the right ones, so that's good. And the platinum spark plugs, which if you turn it round, you can see the part number of right there. Cool, do the same for the coil box, and then at least you'll have the right numbers. There we go. Great. And the next is the torque driver. Unfortunately, my torque driver is a bit of a beast, and it's okay for torquing wheel nuts up, and it'd probably be okay for the spark plugs, but on the inlet manifold head bolts, you need to be a much finer, much lower pressure for that. There's three covers before you start work on removing the air boxes. This one at the front actually pulls backwards slightly. It's just got two clips. Don't pull this upwards, whatever you do, it'll break it. Second one is at the back. Now this one literally just pulls up. It's held in with these three posts, one there and one there. And when they're off, you can remove this decorative cover, which again is held on in the same sort of way with posts and rubber mounts. Now the air cleaner boxes actually have an awful lot of fixings on them, but there's really only two things holding them down, and these are 10mm nuts up here, and then the same sort of prong idea underneath in two places. I think there's one there and one here, but we'll see when we take it off. You've also got to undo the incoming air ducting, and if you look under there, this pipe here usually needs to be pulled out, but we'll look at that when we get closer to it. So although I've seen in other videos people taking the air cleaner box off complete, turns out on my old girl, because she's getting on a bit, I don't want to start riving this pipe around too much, and it's directly in the way of this. So I've taken the cover off the air cleaner box, taken the element out, and we've now got better access to get into this connector, which you've got to nip together on the knurled bit and withdraw. Easier if you push it in a bit. Not easy in any way. So this is the mass airflow sensor connection. You've got to nip it in, push it and pull it to get it out. It's pretty stiff. It's really hard to do with this one hand, so I'm going to take it off camera. But when this is out, it's going to expose that tube there, which we're going to cover up with a rubber glove. So with the air cleaner box off, it makes sense to clean it up. Now it's usually been ground on for a while, so I use a brush just like with falleting, and once it's loose, get the vacuum cleaner on it and job's a good one. This is the turbo boost pipe, so it makes sense not to allow anything to drop in there. A lot of these conduits are already cracking because it's 18 years old, so we're going to put a rubber glove on it, make sure it stays clean. Once you've got both air cleaners out, we can move on to removing the pipes at the back of the inner manifold. So this first one is a tiny little pipe, it's got a little grip clip. The other one has these permanent full circumference grips. Don't know what you call them, but you have to get them from Bentley. I'm going to be replacing mine with Jubilees until mine come. I've ordered some for this. You'll find when you're removing the tiny pipe, it's really helpful to have a pick, something like this, just to help the rubber off this end of the tube. Once you get it moving, it comes off okay, but if you were just to tug on that, it'd probably tear. And it's the best way to deal with that is with some cutters like these, and get them on, give it a good squeeze, and eventually they pop off and you can remove them completely, as with that one. The pipes at the back removed, there are a few more connections to get out. These are your throttle body connections. The one on the right hand side looks pretty easy to go. Just point it out there. You've also got a connection here, I think is a temp sensor. Got the same thing on the other side, and a little bit more difficult to get to is the throttle body for bank one, which is there. Best to push these in a little bit before you try pulling them out and save yourself a bit of grief. This is a bit more detail behind these connectors, to see, understand how they actually clip on. If you look at there's a little notch, and essentially all you're doing is trying to spread this bit out so that it comes over the notch. They are pretty difficult to get out. This one wasn't too bad, but it's the same sort of theory. They've all got these little notches on them. On the other side of the intake manifold, there's also a couple of these bolts or screws to remove. May even need to loosen this as we go further along to get that coil out. And the next step is to start undoing the inlet manifold bolts, which will start, I think, working out to in a crisscross pattern. So removing the inlet manifold nuts is fairly straightforward. Just a hex 7, I believe, bit, and get a focus on it. Yep. Sorry, hex 5. With all of the inlet manifold bolts out and these air pipes from the head of the throttle body removed, these sometimes are a bit stiff. If you give them a little twist, they'll generally break. They'll be gentle, obviously we're here to fix things, not break them, so bear that in mind. Once that's out, you should be able to lift the inlet manifold. You can see where it breaks there. Before I go any further, I've got to have another go at getting these out. Obviously with this loose, it's going to be a lot easier to do. Managed to get the throttle body electrical connector off, which is down there now, but I think this temperature sensor one needs to be lifted out a bit before I can get my fingers onto it. One final thing before the inlet manifold can come off, and that's this pipe here, which is held on with that clip. You slide it back and then wiggle this until it comes out. Sometimes find it useful just to put a screwdriver between that joint and the top of the rubber to start it moving, and then it came out okay. Got the inlet manifold off, and before I do anything else, I've put some lint-free microfiber towels over the now open ports. Left the gasket in place for now. I've got a new one to put on. I've noticed while I've got it off here that actually I could do with rocket cover gaskets. It's not pouring out, but obviously there's evidence there of oil contamination, so needs doing at some point in the future. Next job is to start removing the connections to the coil packs. still labelled up these, which is pretty cool, per cylinder. And then once we've got those out, we can start removing the spark plugs. Before I do any of that, I'm going to vac out the spark plug holes just to make sure there's no crap in there. Speaking of which, remember we put those rubber gloves on, you can see why that's a good idea.